Hello, today I'm going to walk you through the self-service account management that has been newly released for FusionAuth 1.26. So I have set up an application. This is a normal example node application, and I've also configured FusionAuth to have MFA enabled. So I'm going to walk you through just real quick high level what I did there. First thing I needed to do was go to customizations and then templates to set up a email MFA template. And what this template is going to do is it's going to let us send a code to the user, which will serve as an additional factor of authentication. Not a fancy email. The real meat of it is right here where it says your two-factor code is code. The next thing I needed to do was configure my tenant. And I did this in a couple of different ways. The first thing I did was went to the email tab. And here I need to make sure that my SMTP settings work. And you can do that by configuring things and then sending a test email. And I set up a local email server so I can see that I did receive that test email. The next thing I needed to do was set up multi-factor configuration. And here you can see that you can set up Google Authenticator, email, SMS, and then as we add more MFA factors or more MFA methods, they will be added here as well. So you can configure this on a tenant by tenant basis. Another thing I needed to do was set up my Reactor license. Google Authenticator MFA is included in the community version, which is free, which does not require a license, but the email MFA that I'm demoing does require a valid license. So you can get that on the FusionAuth website. The last thing I needed to do was set up my application. So we have the Pied Piper application here. And I have configured it to use the authorization code grant. I've added a redirect URL. I've added a logout URL. This is all pretty standard stuff. This is not MFA related. I also need to, for self-service, make sure that this form setting is set to a valid form. So you can configure this form to be whatever you want. So if you have additional attributes that you want your users to be able to self-manage, you can absolutely do that. And we'll see an example of how a user is going to self-manage in a little bit. And the last thing I could do is change the templates that are used for the multi-factor messages. I'm not going to do that here because the template settings are good enough. So that's essentially all I need to do from the admin side. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like from the user side. So again, as I mentioned, this is a slightly modified version of the example node application. So I'm going to log in. Now I have a couple of options here. Obviously, if this were a real application, there'd be a lot more functionality, but here we can manage our account or we can log out. So let's go ahead and manage our account first. This link up here is just that well-known URL and then the client ID, which is the application that I set up. So from here, Dinesh can see his user profile data. Right now he doesn't have a lot going on, just first name, last name, and email. He can also edit it. So he can change his first name. That's actually correct spelling there. And he could change his password if he wanted to, but that's his choice. So that is a very powerful kind of user portal that you get for the price of the license. This again is a premium feature, and obviously this account page doesn't really match probably any other websites on the internet, but it is completely configurable and themable the same way that all the other FusionAuth hosted login pages are. So let's actually enable two-factor authentication for Dinesh. So here we can see that we have the options that are enabled at the tenant level. We have the Authenticator app. Again, this is Google Authenticator or Authy. And we can also choose email. So here we can pick a different email address. So let's say Dinesh doesn't want to set up MFA with this email address. He wants to use a different one, perhaps because he wants to add multiple different email addresses for additional security, or if you have an account that's shared between two people or two people need to access, like a spouse, you can add both people so that you can get a code sent to either email address. Then you have to send a one-time code, which will arrive over at our mail server. And we can cut and paste that. Enter it here. So now we actually are displayed a couple of one-time recovery codes, 10 of them in fact. And these should be printed out or written down because these can be used to disable MFA, these can be used in place of MFA, and this is just an additional layer of protection for your user if the email account or the device that they have MFA tied to is lost. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and log out of the account, and then we'll see Dinesh get prompted for MFA. Because there is only one MFA method enabled, it defaults to using that. So there's going to be a code automatically sent. If you have two or more MFA methods associated with this account, then you will be presented with a choice. The code arrived. Enter it. You can choose to trust a computer or a mobile device for 30 days. We're not going to do that. And it takes me through. The same way I can enable MFA with this new functionality, I can disable it as well. As we said here, you could add more two-factor authentication methods if you wanted. Now, we don't want to just let anybody disable MFA because that's a security risk. So we're going to require someone to complete an MFA process before we let them disable it. So we send the code. We copy and paste in this code. And now we have disabled it. So this self-serve functionality there's really two main pieces. There's the first, which is the profile editing, which we saw you can empower users to change their profile attributes themselves without requiring any coding or effort other than the initial configuration from you. And then there's the management of two-factor authentication, which you can let your users set up SMS, email, or Google Authenticator type time-based one-time password. And again, all this is included in a premium edition, and all of it requires very low coding, a little bit of configuration, and some linking up of URLs, and then you're good to go. So if you're looking to accelerate your application development and take authorization, authentication, user management off of your plate and put it on somebody else's, please check out FusionAuth today.